the music industry is often seen as a fierce competition, with artists and songwriters battling for attention, popularity, and influence. But what if success in music isn't just about talent or luck? What if it's also about politics? Throughout history, governments have played a significant and sometimes invisible role in shaping what we hear. From outright censorship and propaganda to strategic support and national investment, political involvement in music takes many forms. That leads me to my question: how has government involvement shaped the music industry today? To what extent can the government be involved in the music industry before there's a tangible effect on artistic freedom and creativity? Before we try to answer this question and explore past examples of government involvement, we need to know the social and economic impacts of music itself to understand why the government would want to be involved in the first place. On a global scale, the music industry is worth about $30 billion, only 0.3% of the overall economy. But for some countries, it is a major contributor, like South Korea's music industry, which we'll go into later. Arguably more important is the social impact that music has. Music is incredibly popular and can be used to connect people, but also promote messages. It's played a role in social movements or change and shaped entire cultures. But its power can be used as a tool, as a way of shaping the opinions of the public. And that leads me to the first part of my inquiry: how music has been used as a political weapon, both against and for the government, to show the impact that music can create. One of the clearest examples of music being used as political resistance comes from the United States during the Vietnam War. The Vietnam War was a long and controversial conflict, with American military involvement beginning in the late 1950s and escalating heavily in the 1960s. It sparked nationwide protests, particularly among young people who opposed the draft, the violence, and the government's motives. In this politically charged environment, music became a powerful tool for protests. These songs helped unite a movement, shape public opinion, and challenge the government's actions in a very public way. A standout example is Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater Revival, released in 1969. The song criticizes the unfairness of the draft system, where wealthier Americans, often with political connections, were able to avoid military service, while working-class citizens were sent to fight. One of the most iconic lines read, it ain't me, I ain't no senator's son." The song's raw energy and blunt messaging made it a rallying cry for the anti-war movement. And this wasn't just an underground protest song, but hit number 14 on the Billboard Hot 100, proving that resistance music was not only widespread, but commercially successful. Other songs like War by Edwin Starr also topped the charts, showing how popular and impactful protest music became. This moment in history shows that music doesn't need government backing to make an impact, and is very powerful. In this case, the absence of government involvement, or even resistance to it, allowed for more raw, unfiltered creativity. Public approval of the Vietnam War started at around 60% in 1965 and steadily declined to just 28% in 1971. And in 1973, the government backed out and the Vietnam War was over. Now, while this is one of the most famous examples of music being used, I don't want to say music single-handedly did all of this. There were already plenty of anti-war sentiments, and the music only helped to grow the fire. While it had a substantial impact on the movement, it wasn't the center of it. But of course, this is America, where free speech is protected. But what happens when the government holds much more control and has the power to silence any negative social commentaries? This is when the government is really starting to get involved. In China, they're fully aware of the influence and power that different forms of media can have, including music. And so, to prevent even the notion of social reform, the government completely dictates what can and can't be said. Online music platforms are heavily regulated, and songs have to pass content regulations to get music approved for release. Topics like democracy, criticism of the CCP, or historical events like Tiananmen Square are completely off limits, and any artists that fail to follow government guidelines are completely blacklisted. They're erased off of the internet, their works are banned, and before long, it's like they never even existed. Even Western artists have been banned for political statements or actions involving controversial topics like support for Hong Kong protests, Tibetan independence, or even acknowledging Taiwan as a country. For example, Lady Gaga was banned from China after meeting with the Dalai Lama, a spiritual leader who advocates for Tibetan autonomy. The band Maroon 5 actually had their tour cancelled after a band member wished the Dalai Lama a happy birthday on Twitter. No formal explanation was given, but their tickets were pulled and promotional material was scrapped. Of course, this level of involvement is harmful to artistic freedom and global expression. When artists are banned simply for acknowledging something like Taiwan's existence, it sends a message that only government-approved art is allowed. That doesn't just silence individuals, it reshapes culture itself. But I'm not here to argue about Chinese media censorship. Rather, I want to highlight this as an extreme case of government influence reaching so far that it controls what can be said, heard, and even remembered. However, I do acknowledge that despite the limited scope of content that artists are allowed to make, the Chinese music market is still a rapidly growing industry and is the 5th in the world. However, this is still an issue that could be said to have a global impact, especially when even Western artists start self-censoring to stay marketable in China. Now, the Chinese government is fully involved. However, does involvement necessarily mean influence? Can governments be involved? Can they support their music industries without controlling or shaping the content? And the biggest question is it a bad thing that they're able to shape the content? Are there any direct, tangible effects of this? I mean, the use of music to shape a country's culture and opinions doesn't have to be so aggressive or even obvious. It's not just about censorship. Government involvement can also take the form of strategic support, offering funding, promotion, or infrastructure. This can range anywhere from minor policies to help artists to a full-on investment to grow the industry and cement music as a national pride. But even this kind of support can come with influence. This is how countries have grown their music industries to become cultural powerhouses, no longer serving as mere entertainment, but as a part of national identity. While some governments have suppressed or censored music, South Korea took a different approach: strategic investment. In the wake of the 1997 Asian financial crisis, the government began to see culture, especially music, as a valuable export. Through agencies like the Ministry of Culture and KOCCA, or Korea Creative Content Agency, it supported K-pop's growth with funding, training, infrastructure, and global promotion. This helped turn K-pop into a tool of soft power. Soft power is basically just a way for a country to influence global perception and diplomacy through cultural appeal rather than military or economic force. South Korea's government investment in cultural industries, including K-pop, grew from a couple million to nearly 200 million annually over 3 decades. In parallel, the K-pop industry's revenues soared from negligible export figures in the 1990s to billions of dollars in the 2020s, with a projected 20 billion events market by 2031. In the early stages of K-pop, there was a very strong correlation between government investment and revenue growth. However, now industry growth is also driven by global demand. Today, K-pop and related merchandise generated over $9 billion in the US alone in 2023, with groups like BTS contributing more than $3.5 billion annually to the South Korean economy. Actually, BTS is a prime example of a K-pop group that's gained massive global traction. They were invited to speak at the United Nations, which positioned them not just as entertainers, but as cultural ambassadors, representing Korean values and youth identity. At one point, their global influence sparked a national debate over whether they should be exempt over mandatory military service, a moment that showed just how seriously the nation regards K-pop as a cultural asset. However, even in this more supportive model of government involvement, the influence is still present. K-pop idols are expected to maintain carefully managed images, avoiding controversy to protect their reputations and the broader industry. Political messages are rare, and creative choices are often shaped to succeed internationally while also staying safe and uncontroversial within South Korea. It's a polished Korean export, but for global fans, it's still entertainment, which leads to a larger question. If content is compelling and resonant, does it matter if it's also a product of national strategy? Does government support automatically imply manipulation, or is it just another factor in how cultural products take shape? So, if we compare all of the different ways the government engages with the music industry, where is the line before it starts infringing on authenticity and artistic creativity? It might seem like there's no perfect balance. Total control, like strict censorship, clearly silences creativity, but even strategic support, like funding and promotion, still nudges artists in a particular direction. And if a government stays out of it entirely, sure, the artists can grow their followers on their own, but the industry might never reach its full potential. So maybe the conclusion is this: any involvement means influence, which means the artists and their content will be affected. Right? Wrong! What if government support doesn't erase authenticity? Even with government influence, whether through censorship or support, people can still connect and appreciate music. As a viewer, the strategic backing behind K-pop doesn't take away from the fact that BTS is still smooth as butter. Hey. K-pop might be shaped by national strategy, but it's also beloved worldwide for its artistry, emotion, and impact. What really matters is whether that support helps more people make and share music, even if it's tailored slightly towards a certain image or message or direction. As a matter of fact, China's music industry is again still fifth in the world despite heavy censorship, meaning sometimes there may not even be tangible effects on revenue growth. So all in all, music, even when shaped by political forces, can still carry real meaning, spark connections, and reflect true artistry. I hope after this you gain some motivation to create your own works of art, regardless of the circumstances and influences that you're under. Big thank you to Ayush, Abdeli, Miss Sidhu, Mr. Bidet, and my grandma's phone sim for giving internet.